Welcome to the Ignited Recovery Podcast, a new way forward for anyone looking for answers but feeling left out. If you've been searching for empowerment, triumph, and purpose, you've found them right here. You won't hear the same solutions, and you're not going to have any excuses to fall back on, because Ignited Recovery allows heroes to rise and become their best selves. I'm Dr. Adi Jaffe, and I can't wait to be your guide on this journey. Are you ready to become an ignited hero? We've all been hearing about the microbiome and how important it is for our health. It's kind of funny, right? Only 10 years ago, we believed that killing the bacteria on everything was the way to go. I mean, do you remember those sanitizer sprays everywhere? And now we're gradually learning that, surprise, surprise, not really, we actually need the bacteria around us to thrive and even survive. The thing is that everybody's been focusing almost exclusively on the bacteria in your body that helps you digest food. And that is really important because if you can't digest it, you can't live off of the nutrients, and then you develop all sort of GI problems and you have to... Never mind. But research has been showing us an incredible connection between bacteria in your gut and your mental health. Seriously. For instance, studies have shown that the bacteria in the gut of an animal can change its level of depression. And more research is coming out showing that the same exact thing probably plays a role in anxiety, depression, maybe even autism and ADHD. Isn't that amazing? So I did some research and I decided to add a probiotic mix that helps not only mood, but also the communication between my gut and the brain. It's called Amare, and their wellness kit takes care of everything that I need. The probiotics that have been researched to provide actual tangible help, and the prebiotics and everything that those bacteria need to thrive and do their work. I've been using it myself for 3 months, and I gotta say, it's really helped regulate my mood and keep me even. And it's helping me feel less foggy too, especially in the morning. Look, these guys really did their research, and this stuff is top notch. If you want to get it for yourself, just follow the link in our show notes and you can join the Mind Biome Revolution with me. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of the Ignited Recovery Secrets Podcast. My name is Adi Jaffe, and I'm here to talk to you about anxiety, depression, and a whole slew of other ongoing mental health struggles that are very common among the people I work with. Now, I've struggled with both anxiety and depression much more seriously previously in my life, and to some smaller extent, they still come up here and there. The thing is, when I think of my own struggles and the people that I work with and what I hear from them, anxiety and depression are these kind of big labels that we give to ongoing concerns and worries about essentially everything that isn't going right in life. And if you're listening right now, you can probably think of some of your own, but I'll name some, right? Like family. Whether that is fighting with your family, disagreements you've had, siblings, parents, uncles, aunts you can't stand and have serious problems with. Work, colleagues, bosses, tasks that are ongoing, that are giving you a problem. Work hours, shifts you're getting or not getting, getting fired, not being able to get rehired, all those kinds of things that go around work, right? Car. I told my story about what happened with my car. By the way, the front hood of my car is still not fixed. Flat tires, running out of gas, not having money to pay for your car, insurance, all that kind of stuff. And then money, that's a big one, right? Not having enough money to fill in the blank, running out of money, spending too much money, not being able to get a job that pays you enough money. And by the way, I work with people who are incredibly wealthy and billionaires, and sometimes money can still be a problem from that end because money can be used as a source of power or lack of power, even in that context with more than enough money. Then there's things like past misdeeds, feeling guilty, shameful, embarrassed about things you've done in the past, being scared about things you might do in the future or things that might happen in the future. And the list is ongoing, right? How many people here can just think of hundreds of more examples from your own life? Kids, I didn't even mention kids in here. There are a lot of concerns and worries about everything that isn't going exactly right in life. We're a little sick here, in the family right now. So getting sick, health is another one of those. So many examples of this. Now, back in the day, I would kind of sit around and worry all day about what people were thinking of me, about everything that I'd done wrong, about not having enough money. That was one of the reasons that I liked drugs so much, because that was one of the tools I'd use to make sure that I didn't sit around all day and worry. If I didn't have new tools to make sure that I didn't worry, I might still want to rely on those old behaviors. But because I have all these new tools in place, I don't have to worry about it in the same way that I used to. And so I actually literally don't experience the same anxiety and depression that I used to, because I've kind of solved the concern and worry problem. And when I say I kind of solved it, it really reminds me of a conversation that I had when I was just starting my first real business, the alternatives rehab that I'd co-founded with a partner. When that was starting, I had zero business experience. And so I turned to this organization called SCORE. If you've never heard of them and you're starting a business, I would really recommend it if you're anywhere in the US. They assign a mentor to you and somebody who has done business before, and you can sit down and talk to them. And so I went through some candidates and I found somebody that seemed like a good fit. And we set up a coffee date, and it was very romantic. It was one of those Starbucks in a Target at a mall nearby here. Exactly what you kind of imagine a high-level business meeting would look like. So we're sitting there, I got there a little early because I was really nervous actually. And I got my little coffee in in one of those like Starbucks to go cardboard cups. And I'm sitting there waiting for the guy. And, this guy was older. He was essentially a volunteer who was in his late 70s, had run a few businesses himself, and was just helping. And so he grabs his coffee. I think I actually bought him his coffee. And we sit down, and at this table in the middle of a mall, all these kids running around. It's kind of early in the morning. It's like 9:30. And we sit down, and he just starts asking me about the business and what it is that we're trying to do, et cetera. And as we talk more and more and more, he gets kind of quiet, and he says, I have one lesson that I really want to tell you about. Because he said, what I see a lot of times, and what I used to do in my own business, is when you run a business, a lot of things jump at you constantly that you have to fix. A lot of issues make it to the forefront, especially when you are the CEO or the head honcho kind of in charge or whatever. And so he's saying, I notice for myself and a lot of the other people that I've worked with and a lot of the people that I've mentored, that they really spend their entire day trying to solve problems, and they get really burnt out, and they get really troubled, anxious, depressed as the business builds up. And so what I realize is a lot of people feel like they're banging their head against the wall trying to solve problems they can't solve. And the reason is that not everything that pops up in front of you is actually a problem. He said the thing is, there are problems and then there are realities. So like if you run a business and you have your own web server, and your server just broke down, that's a problem, right? You got to go fix the server. We'll get it back up. You run a business and your accountant just quit or decided that, they can't work for you anymore. That's a problem. If you realize you're missing a key person in your organization that you need to have, that will be a problem. That's something you got to go solve. Or, like the floor had damage to it and you got to go fix that problem. But staff turnover and the fact that you are going to lose people in your organization, and you're going to realize that there are people that have left or are missing in the organization, that's not a problem. That's a reality. You cannot solve staff turnover. The fact that customers will ask for refunds, he said to me, that's a reality. That's going to end up happening. You cannot fix it. You cannot create a system that nobody asks for a refund from ever. Or the fact that you're going to have a high overhead, right? That you're going to have to pay a lot of money for your office and for marketing and for staffing, etc. That's a reality. So what he was saying is, what I realized for a lot of people when I start working with them is, one of your first jobs as a manager is to start categorizing the things that come up in front of you as problems or realities. Because if you sit around trying to fix a reality, you can spend hours, days, weeks, years, decades trying to solve it and just getting really burnt out and frustrated. Now, that doesn't mean you can't do anything about realities, right? But realities don't get solved. They get prepared for, they get optimized. You deal with them in the most efficient way, right? You don't want customer refunds to be rampant, but they're going to be there. So maybe you know that you're missing a key person in your organization for customer service to help reduce customer refunds. So the problem is hiring that person, but really be clear about what you're trying to solve. Is it a problem or is it a reality? Now, he didn't tell me this about life, but you probably picked this up if you've been listening to this for a while. I take a lot of the lessons I've learned in other ways, and I then figure out ways to apply them to other areas in the world. And I think that in life there are problems and there are realities. And sometimes we're not really clear about which one we're dealing with. And so we keep trying to solve realities. So if you broke your finger, that's a problem. You got to go fix it. But if you have conflict in your relationship, that's a reality. Injuries as a grand issue in life, that's probably a reality. If you lost your credit card, that's a problem. If things you do in life don't deliver perfect results, unfortunately, that's a reality. My question to you is, how much time do you think you're spending in your life trying to solve realities? Or how much time are you spending in your life worrying about realities? And I want to talk, for instance, about this idea of conflict in relationships. And the reason that comes up to me so much is Sophie and I, along with Alexander Roxo, we just led a couples workshop, 2 couples workshops in Seattle. And I notice this over and over and over when we do couples work. And what ends up happening is people shy away from conflict for 2 big reasons. A, they feel really uncomfortable about it. And by the way, discomfort around conflict, that's probably a reality. You can clean it up a little bit, but it's going to be there. But also, a lot of us have somehow developed this idea that a really good relationship does not have conflict. And so we don't want to engage in a lot of conflict in our relationship because that would mean that it's not a good relationship. But conflict in relationship, in all of your relationships, that's a reality. And so we were talking to this one couple in the workshop, and they had gone through a pretty anxiety-provoking night out. It was supposed to start out as a beautiful date night, but it didn't quite work out that way. It blew up. They had gone to see a band, had a friend of the wife join, so all of a sudden there's a third wheel, and then another couple that they met there joined in. The husband was feeling a little out of sorts because he wanted a date night, but the wheels were they continued coming off. And that couple, they separated. The guy went to the bathroom, came back, nobody was around. And so he started texting and calling his wife. She wasn't responding. Eventually, when she finally answered the phone, it turned out she was backstage with the band. He started freaking out, trying to figure out how to get back there and solve that issue, right? His wife disappeared. What's she doing? The night just devolved. It just became worse and worse. The fight became worse and worse, more and more extreme. The night ended. They separated. He went home. She slept at a friend's house. They were both drunk. And the next day, everything had calmed down just enough. The wife came back home. They tried to talk about it for a minute, but it just really didn't go anywhere. And so they separated again, let it all calm down. And by the time the workshop had happened, it had been a couple of weeks, and they hadn't talked about it again. There was a lot of emotion loaded up in it. And one of the things they were doing, what we dealt with them with in the workshop was, they had not brought that back up because it had become one of those, I call them the piles of shit that gather up in life, right? It was a night that blew up and exploded, and it felt terrible. And they didn't really want to revisit it because now things had calmed down and they could just move forward. And it felt bad drudging that back up again. Bringing conflict up felt bad. They wanted to get away from it. They wanted to avoid it. But what I realized happens to a lot of couples is these nights, these events, these experiences happen in life, and they leave this nice little pile of shit somewhere in the area of your life. In the house of your life, in different rooms, there are these piles. And what I can guarantee for that couple, at least until we processed it, and hopefully they process it more after the workshop, the bar they had gone to, the band they had seen, the friends they were with, the beers they had drank that night, the type of car they had gone home in their separate ways in Ubers, the conversation they had the next morning, the clothes they were wearing now had all become connected with that conflict, with that pile of shit. Now, if there was only one of those, that's not that big a deal. But what ends up happening to a lot of us in life is we go through life and we keep collecting these piles. And because we want to avoid the conflict, they just collect because we never want to go clean that back up. And next thing you know, and let me know if this applies to you, screenshot this, tag me, and let me know if this applies to you. What you end up with is a life full of these piles in all the rooms. And what you're doing now in life is you're trying to navigate your way around them so you don't have to step in shit and you don't have to deal with it again. So now there are restaurants you can't go to, movies you can't talk about, friends whose names you can't mention, clothes you can't wear anymore, whole towns, countries, and airlines and airports that you can't walk into, all because you're trying to avoid conflict. Why? Because you think conflict is a problem, but it's actually a reality. You can't avoid it. The more you avoid it, the more shit will end up being everywhere in your house until eventually you have nowhere to step. And then you're going to say to yourself, look, we can't talk about anything. This relationship is going nowhere. This is useless. We might as well break up. So it's time to get real about what's going on in life and start categorizing things appropriately in your life so that you can focus on fixing problems while understanding realities. Fighting in a relationship, disagreeing in a relationship is not a problem. It's a reality. Not knowing how to communicate within a fight, that's a problem. That's something you can fix. And so we actually have an amazing solution for you all. Some of you have unhealthy habits that you've been trying to get rid of forever. We've heard your call. And so we need to fix those. Those are problems. And we're coming up with our 21-day challenge. By the time this comes out, I think there's literally about 1 week before the April 1st launch, maybe 2 weeks before the April 1st launch of this challenge. So go to 21dayhabitreset.com. Again, 21dayhabitreset.com and join us on this challenge so that you can identify some of these problems that are going on in your head, some of these problems that are going on in your life, and we can help you reset them. We can help you change them so you don't have to struggle with them on an ongoing basis anymore. So everybody, listen. Start doing this with everything you're struggling with right now. Start making a list of which of the things you're dealing with are problems and which of them are realities. And I can guarantee you'll end up seeing that some of the most troubling, quote unquote, problems you've been dealing with are actually just things you have to get used to and or refine and make more efficient, but you'll never solve, you'll never get rid of them. I know that for me, this has been huge in my life because it allowed me to stop putting all of my attention, all my focus, all my anxieties, and all my worries on problems that are unfixable. Thank you so much for joining us here today. I can't wait to see you on the challenge and help you fix and solve some of the problems in your life. I'm going to be with you live for 21 days. It's going to be incredible. Can't wait to do it. Thank you so much for tuning in. We will see you here next week.
Thank you for tuning in to the Ignited Heroes Recovery Podcast. I really hope you found the information here useful and that we'll see you back here next week. And look, I want to make sure that this podcast is the most useful it can be for you, so please let me know by emailing info@ignited.com if there are any specific topics or questions you'd like to have addressed. As usual, if you like this episode, I would love for you to leave us a 5-star review and rating. Thanks, and see you next week.